I want to get closer to the bread. That's what I want.
Yeah.
I want to thank everyone for tuning in. If you are new to my channel, my name is Kimberly McIntyre. I'm a nutrition and wellness coach, and I love to get with people that can just give us a higher level of education. Today we are here at the Breadbeckers, actually their facility where they sell all kinds of grains, and really it's a one-stop shop. If you are into bread making, you can get everything that you need here, and I drive 2.5 hours to come shop here, because I love to just look. I love to be able to see all that you have to offer.
Yeah.
So I am here with Sue Becker, and if you have not seen our other video that we did, I'm going to link it in the description below, because she tells a little bit about her story, which everyone needs to hear. And I want to thank you so much for having this conversation with us, bringing us amazing information. The other thing I wanted to tell you, which I'll just kind of open up on what we're going to be talking about today. So one of my subscribers actually reached out to me, which I have listened to your Healthy Minutes, but she didn't know that. So she has a podcast. It's called Sue's Healthy Minutes. That's the actual name, isn't it? Okay.
That's the actual name. Yeah.
And the subscriber said, you need to go and listen to her Healthy Minutes, where this lady is talking about how she was incredibly iron deficient and what the bread did for her. So, of course, I went and listened to it. Amazing information.
One of the best testimonies ever.
But towards the end, she pops this information about vitamin
tiny little bit about vitamin E. It was amazing.
And so I drove all this way so that I could bring this information to you, because it's going to blow you away.
It is.
So I'm going to give it over to you, Sue.
All right.
And just let us know all this amazing stuff that we need to hear. And to know that this is a great way to get it.
To get your vitamin E. And once this was taken away from us in the early 1900s, we lost our most nutrient-dense source of vitamin E. And it's so important. And I've spent years studying vitamin E, even before milling my grain and making my own bread. And like I told you before we started, of course, I brushed up on some things and pull out my vitamin E books. And I just told my husband, I'm like, I'm more excited again about vitamin E every time I study it. So let's talk about vitamin E. I do want to tell everybody we are live at our Breadbecker store, and it is a warehouse and a packaging place and store. We have customers coming in, so you may hear some background noise. We apologize for that, but it is what it is.
That's what
we're in our studio where we do live classes on bread making, and we are a one-stop shop. Grain mills, mixers, bread machine, grains, beans, honey, everything. So let's talk about vitamin E. You ready?
Yes.
All right. So I'm going to try to simplify this as much as I can, because we don't want a 2-hour lecture. But in a nutshell, despite a wide variety of symptoms that can come on us because of a vitamin E deficiency, it really appears to have one basic function, and that is as an antioxidant. And we hear that word thrown around a lot. And, you know, I'm one that I don't like to focus so much on one nutrient or like one grain. People ask me, like, what's the healthiest grain? I'm like, that's like asking what's the healthiest fruit or vegetable. So to me, asking what is the most important vitamin or mineral, it's hard, but the more I study vitamin E, if I had to pick one, I would say this is it, because the function of vitamin E is to protect fat and fat-like substances, like fatty acids, in our bodies from, it protects those substances from being oxidized in the presence of oxygen, okay? Which we need oxygen to live, but oxygen can also be a destroyer and break things down and cause free radicals, and hence the term antioxidants. And those vitamins like vitamin A, vitamin C, vitamin E are called antioxidants because they kind of do the same thing. But vitamin E particularly protects fatty acids and fat-like substances from being oxidized. Now, why is that so important? What are these fat-like substances? What are these fatty acids? Vitamin A, so that's one. Carotene, but fatty acids in particular make up the cell membrane of every cell in our body, okay? And not only every cell in our body, but all the connective tissue that holds every cell in our body together. And so if vitamin E is not there, then these fatty acids get oxidized and they can't do their job. Fats are, their structure in and of itself enables them to very easily bind with something else to do a job. And that's how they function in all these ways in our body. Not just the cell membrane, not just the connective tissue, not just this, not just that, but everywhere is these fatty acids. That's why they're called essential, because our body needs them. But we have to have that vitamin E protecting them so they don't get oxidized before they get to our cells where they're needed. So vitamin E protects that. So that's, in a nutshell, that's kind of what vitamin E does. It delivers those fats to our cells where they can be used. Now, like I mentioned before, the cell membrane of every cell in our body is made up of a fatty acid and a protein combined. So if vitamin E is deficient, what might happen is that cell membrane, the integrity of the cell membrane might be compromised. So it becomes weakened. What happens when our cells become weakened? They break down, they die, you know. Now, every second, cells are dying. Every second, they're being replaced. I mean, that's just a fact of life. That's the way God made us. Without vitamin E, then you have all this oxidation happening. And if it's the fatty acids that make up your cell membrane, then those cells may be dying at a faster rate than they can be replaced. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah, so that's it in a nutshell. So this is where I think genetics plays such a key role. You know, you'll hear people say, oh, it's genetic, it's genetic. And that can be true to a degree. If we're giving our bodies what we need, genetics doesn't play as big a role, or we can overcome the power of genetics. So what genetics determines is what cell's going to break down in your body faster than, say, the cells that may break down in my body at a faster rate than they can be replaced. Do you see what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. So for you, it might be skin cells. For me, it might be heart cells. For me, it might be this, that, or the other. You see? So that's why I've just been blown away over the years when people say, all I changed was the bread, and this happened, and it's all these different things. And when I trace it back, so much of it goes back to vitamin E. Let's say the cell membrane of your red blood cells is weakened. Every second, 10 million red blood cells die. Every second. But every second, 10 million red blood cells are being replaced. But let's say more are being broken down because of weakness in the cell membrane than can be replaced. Well, your red blood cells are what transports your iron. Iron deficient anemia could not just, it might not be because you're deficient in iron, it might be because you don't have enough red blood cells to have that iron being taken up by your blood. Therein is anemia, and no amount of iron supplementation is going to correct that problem. And that's why the podcast you were mentioning, she's been on transfusions, iron transfusions, twice a year for 7 years and 6 months on the bread.
Continually keep coming back.
Yeah.
Until
I think she started making her bread in October. It was just a matter of a few months when she went in to have her blood work done. She's not anemic. And this is not the first time I've heard this. And that's why I started researching and going, what could this be? Because, I mean, yes, there's iron in the bread, in wheat, if it's freshly milled, but there's something else going on, you know. Yes. Here she was getting iron transfusion, and it wasn't correcting the issue. So that's a big player. So what if it's the cells of your skin that are breaking down at a faster rate then your body can replace them? Then you're going to have skin issues and you know, you're aging, and vitamin E is known as the anti-aging nutrient. So it can bring nutrients there, protect the cell membrane so that you have nice skin, you know. And another thing, you know, you probably heard about vitamin E and scarring. Well, when you get a major cut, okay, we all know that means you're probably going to have a scar. A little cut, it'll heal, and that's okay. But a major injury in your skin where you've severed your blood supply, well, here's what's interesting. Not only does vitamin E protect your cell membrane of every cell in your body, but it also protects oxygen and gets more oxygen to that area because it's not being, you know, tied up, being, you know, by oxidation. So also, you're getting more oxygen to your areas, your cells, but also vitamin E is helping your cells not to need as much oxygen. So when you get a major cut, a major injury, you're severing the blood supply, right? You're cutting off some significant blood supply to that area, so the oxygen supply as well. Well, scar tissue cells require less oxygen than normal cells. So that's why you get scar tissue formed from a major cut, okay? Whereas if you have vitamin E, then it will reduce the amount of oxygen that those cells need, provide those cells with as much oxygen as possible, and let you produce normal skin cells.
Incredible.
Isn't that amazing?
It is amazing.
Yeah. What if it is the cells that are weakened and dying at a faster rate than can be replaced? What if it's the cells of your veins and arteries? Well, then you're going to have issues like aneurysms, like varicose veins. Those are all, from weakening cells, areas of your vessels. I mean,
Right.
it's endless, the possibilities. Your stomach lining. So what if it's your stomach lining, dying cells that are dying at a faster rate than being replaced? Then you're looking at ulcers and just all kinds of things. Your hair, your skin, your heart, your lungs, all of these things. God says in Psalm 104, I think it's verse 15, that God gave us bread to strengthen and nourish the heart. What if it is your heart cells that are dying at a faster rate than can be replaced?
Right.
Then your heart's going to be weakened. And here's something that really has hit me in the last few years: viral invasion. And this was where I began studying vitamin E. So a virus, the way it reproduces in your body is it must use your cell's reproductive system. Bacteria, they can reproduce on their own. So if you get food poisoning from a bacteria or a bacterial infection, it can reproduce on its own in your body. A virus cannot. It must invade your cells. So what if your cell membrane is weakened? You're going to be more susceptible to a viral infection.
Right.
And one of our #1 testimonies is the wart stories. Just hundreds and hundreds of wart stories. And years ago, before I started doing bread, I had read in my studies, because I've been studying vitamin E a long time, 30-something, 40-something years now, I had read vitamin E has been known to get rid of warts. Okay, that's interesting. How is that happening? Well, one of the ways, warts are a manifestation of a viral infection. They're not just an ugly skin tag. It is a virus that is in our body. It is contagious. If that cell membrane is weakened and more susceptible to a viral infection, then you may contract a virus whose manifestation is warts, and they can be burned off. They'll all come back because you didn't treat the virus.
Right.
You didn't strengthen the cells to make them less susceptible to a viral infection. And I think this is one of the most fascinating testimonies of all, because it's not just warts, it's a virus. It's not just a skin thing. I saw one of my own children's warts go away in the first month when we changed to the bread. And I knew it was the bread because I had studied the vitamin E. I knew it was the richest food source of vitamin E is wheat. Most of your vitamin E supplements are wheat germ oil. And when they took that away by taking the germ out of our flour, we lost that vitamin E. And then, one of my favorite testimonies and wart stories that I tell is a woman who I met at a homeschool show, and I had 45 minutes to do my 3-hour spiel. And so I have to pick and choose. I shared my wart story, shared the wart information, and despite the fact that some people came to me and said, the wart stuff sounds so hokey. It is not. When you study it, it is not. It's a virus. And the bread can strengthen your cells to make them be able to fight a virus and not be susceptible to that reproduction. But this woman came to me, and her daughter had started getting warts at 12 years old. She was now 17. She had over 500 warts on her.
Oh my gosh.
A beautiful, beautiful 17-year-old girl. Had them all burned off. They all came back, because that's a silly way to treat a virus, is to burn off the symptom,
Right.
the manifestation. So they did nothing to the virus. She'd been on multiple medications, nothing, to no avail. And finally, she said currently she's on ulcer medication because they're thinking it could be stress related, which it could be. Stress does do things to our cells, but vitamin E helps that as well. So she heard me speak. She showed me her daughter, said she is so distraught. We've done everything. 5 years, these warts now everywhere. Follows me back to the table. We're cooking bread. She tastes the bread. She's like, okay, fine. How much is a meal? And I tell her, at that time it was $2.50. I think now it's, I don't remember how much, $2.99, whatever it is. Anyway, she goes, we've paid more than that for one medication that didn't work. What have I got to lose? I like to cook, we have to eat. You know, she goes, we couldn't eat the medication that I paid that much money for. This was the great part. 2.5 weeks.
Wow.
From bread. She called, and every wart on that child's body was gone.
Incredible. That's incredible.
Isn't that incredible?
Yes.
And we've had
great way to
hundreds of testimonies from 36 on a child's hands gone in 3 weeks. One lady had a horrible one on her thumb, and it went away with 2 loaves of bread.
Wow.
And she had gone to doctor after doctor after doctor, and they're like, we don't know what to do with that wart. If we tried to cut it out, you would lose your thumb. I mean, she was distraught from a wart. But here's my thing. It's a virus, okay? So our cell membranes are weakened, making us more susceptible to viral invasion and viral reproduction. Get the vitamin E, you fight it. So my encouragement a few years ago, 2020 specifically, was wow, if this bread can do something to warts, to the virus that causes warts, strengthening our cells so much in 2.5 to 3 weeks, a virus that we've had for 5 years or whatever, what else can it protect us from? So, like I said in the beginning, if I had to choose one, I would have to go with vitamin E and bread as the richest food source. Another thing that vitamin E does is it binds, well, those fatty acids. So let's go back to those fatty acids for a minute. They're essential. We need them. We get them from food. And you know the cool thing about grains, particularly wheat, not only is it the richest food source of vitamin E, and when I say wheat, it is one of the richest food sources of vitamin E, but most grains, beans, nuts, and seeds have vitamin E. They also have the fatty acids that your body needs. So you're getting a double dose. You're getting those fatty acids that are so important, and you're getting the vitamin E that protects them.
That work together.
God is so smart. Vitamin E is pretty much in most any food that has oil. And another job that vitamin E does is it combines and protects these fatty acids, and a substance that these fatty acids are a component of is something called prostaglandins. They're a hormone-like substance, but they're different than hormones. Our hormones are produced by our endocrine system, but prostaglandins are produced in the cell where they're needed. And they fight infection, they fight inflammation, but one of the biggest things is prostaglandins are responsible for our blood clotting and our blood thinning mechanism. Thromboxane is our blood clotting, and it's called prostacyclin is our blood thinning. I think I got that right. I might have it backwards. So no, thromboxane is the clotting. So if vitamin E is not there to protect these fatty acids so they can make the right balance of the clotting and the thinning, then what's going to happen? Well, I find that we are fearfully and wonderfully made, and our bodies are going to save our life. So what is the most possible problem that we could have? Would be bleeding to death. So without vitamin E, our bodies tend to produce more, without protection of those fatty acids, tend to produce more thromboxane. And so the thinning is kind of pushed to the side, right? If we don't have enough of those fatty acids, if they're not protected by vitamin E, if they're broken down by oxidation, then we may get too much thromboxane, too much clotting. You see? And vitamin E is known as a blood thinner. So why don't people take that instead of something that causes abnormal blood thinning? Vitamin E won't do that. It doesn't mess with your clotting mechanism. at all. You know, it keeps everything in balance. And I want to read a quote from Dr. Wilfred Shoup. Historically, it is irrefutable that when new and more efficient milling methods were introduced into the manufacture of wheat flour, those methods permitting for the first time the complete stripping away of the highly perishable wheat germ, the diet of Western man lost its only significant source of vitamin E. Flour milling underwent this great change around the turn of the century, and it became general around 1910 or 1920. The amount of vitamin E in the diet was greatly reduced, and with this, the loss of this natural antithrombin, coronary thrombosis, appeared on the scene. He and his brother, his father, two of his brothers and his father all used vitamin E, and they were all medical doctors. Dr. Wilfred Shoup kind of really became very outspoken in the use of vitamin E to treat heart disease. And one thing he said in one of the books, I have mountains of books by him because it's just so fascinating. He said that when in the 1920s, when white flour became food for everybody, and we lost, when flour began to be fractured and they removed the bran and the germ loaded with vitamin E, he said we lost one of our most potent anti-thrombin or anti-clotting agents, food sources that we had. And that's powerful to me. And now we have all these people with clotting issues too much.
To the point that they're dying.
Yeah, and they're having to take blood thinners that cause abnormal thinning. Then they can't eat real food. That you know, it's this roller coaster. So that is so fascinating to me. And another thing that vitamin E does in protecting these fatty acids is those fatty acids bind with cholesterol. And I feel like I'm talking a little bit more about fatty acids, but they're so important, and vitamin E protects them and gets them to our cells, keeps them from being oxidized, you know? So fatty acids bind with cholesterol. Everybody thinks cholesterol is a bad guy. Cholesterol is a very critically important nutrient in our body. Two problems are happening. It's not being broken down to small enough particles to get out of our bloodstream and get to our cells. An interesting fact, that's one of our other big testimonies, is 85 to 100 points my cholesterol dropped, and all I changed was the bread. Every nutrient to metabolize fat and cholesterol, get it out of your bloodstream to your cells, so your blood, your blood cholesterol levels come down. Every nutrient is in wheat, is in grains, is in beans, but they have to be real. They have to have the bran and germ components. Inositol, choline, lecithin, they're all there. Vitamin B6, it's all in grains and beans to bring that cholesterol down. Get it out of our blood to our cells. So it can bind with these fatty acids, protected by vitamin E, delivered to that cholesterol. It makes all our sex hormones, all our steroids, all our anti-inflammatories, all of these things that, look at our world. Why are we having this problem? Well, we have cholesterol that can't get there. We have no vitamin E basically in our diet. And so fatty acids aren't getting used.
And the majority of men are on testosterone.
Yeah, and women, women, we have all these hormone issues, and then think of every health issue just about. What do they prescribe? A steroid of some kind. So we have all these inflammatory issues, and we're being prescribed steroids that our body can make if we had the right nutrients there.
It makes a grain mill sound pretty inexpensive to me.
Oh, yes, yes. When I did one of my first classes, when I really went over the vitamin E, a cardiologist was actually in the class, and I was pretty nervous, and because it was one of the first times a medical doctor was in my class. But he came up to me afterwards and he said, first of all, I want you to know that everything you shared about the vitamin E and the fatty acids and heart disease and all of that, he said, it is absolutely correct. He said, if I was still practicing medicine today, the first thing I would prescribe to my patients is a grain mill. And he goes, most of them are going to look at me like I'm crazy, but it's real. And he saw people in his practice when he was still practicing. He saw the results, and he was like, this is important. This is the first step.
Well, Sue, I want to thank you so much for taking this time to explain this much needed information. And I'd like to hear from you. Did you know, have you heard of this before? And I don't mean that we need vitamin E. I mean this deep conversation, education, and that you can find it all right here.
Yeah, in the bread.
That's what I want to know.
Yeah.
So leave a comment below, let me know. And I want to thank you guys for tuning in. If you don't mind, if you would subscribe to my channel, and if you hit that bell, then you'll be notified for all the things that are to come. I'm actually going to be getting in my kitchen and showing you how to make bread. I'm bringing the Becker home. I'm going to do a Becker haul, so I'm going to show you everything that I buy from here today.
All right.
And I want to thank you guys so much. You guys have a great day. So I just have to ask, do I get to taste this bread?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And this is how much red wheat?
2 parts red, 1 part white. So when I mix it in the bread machine, I just do 2 cups of red wheat, 1 cup of white wheat.
Okay.
And just dump everything in.